in high school.
I knew deep mathematics, like obviously mathematics are stretches up to your honors. But there was this one point where a teacher will ask a question, right? And we'll move around the class with a pipe, whisper to her, then she will just make you, if you just something that doesn't make sense.
I think it's necessary for students to still learn Shakespeare's literature content in today's age.
I was a good crammer at the same time. I never knew that I was so good in cramming. But I would study for my own cramming. So for those other theory subjects, just cram everything.
Yeah.
And I go and print out 100%.
So I'll study ahead. Content that we're gonna do the next month, the fourth month. By the time we do it in class, for me it's a revision.
When we realize them here in university, when you get to university, you're like, hey, these people are too smart, man. No, it's because the environment they are coming from.
Let's not use it as, okay, cool, that's the only thing I qualified for. Because I feel like being a teacher, that's one of the most crucial jobs. It's like being a doctor.
Teachers said Bursaries will fight for you.
Hey.
And mind you, you are owing UCT, brother, but like 180,000. Nowadays, I feel like winning lotto is actually more probable than finding true love.
I've been in a serious relationship only in second year, whereby I felt like I loved someone so much that I didn't want to lose them.
Guys, wait. You know, as a student, it's difficult, guys. Guys, do you know the pain of being of wanting to fight back, but the person has already dropped the call? So I was out of laptop. If it is
I remember when I first met you, you told me that in high school you were basically studying university textbooks. So I'm fascinated by that. I just want to understand, how does a high school kid think of reading high school content? Like, just enlighten me on that.
I'll just say I've never seen myself as the bright student or something like that. I never thought I was having that side, actually. I used to be, let me just say, someone who's taken by the wind. Like, used to go with my friends, used to laugh, used to do a lot of jokes. And I was just someone who's out there, having fun and laughing all around. So obviously it began going to the upper grades, like your grade 10s and some. I've met some very interesting teachers, right? But ideally in high school, I never really understood anything that is being taught in class, right? So I pride myself in understanding by myself, pushing myself.
Oh, so basically you are that type of student that you understand more when you're reading something yourself than when you're listening to the teacher.
100%, definitely. So by the virtue of doing that, so I was someone who's always, maybe during study breaks, during breaks, high school breaks, I would go to the library of the school, basically. Obviously, the library was not well developed in that sense. It was just having books all over the place, heavy material books that you'll find them there by mistake. So how I found my interest, there was this one point where a teacher will ask a question, right? And we'll move around the class with a pipe. Beating people, you'd whisper to her, then she will just make you, if you just something that doesn't make sense. You see?
That's crazy.
So we'll just make you in a sense that if you're asking stuff that doesn't make sense. So like I would be sitting there, I'll be like, I'll be in June, July, that's what they say, right? So one day the teacher now passes by me and I just say something in their ears and I see myself saved in that sense. So
you say the correct thing.
Yes. But I never understood what I was saying. That's the thing. Like I used to say correct things, but they never. I never thought like.
I want us to touch on that, but before we touch on that, I have a crazy story to tell. I remember back when I was in grade 5, I think. Grade 5, there's this teacher used to do that as well, whereby he'll come to class and ask a question and then start from like the front row, the first person. If you give them the wrong answer, they beat you, and then they go on and on and on and on. And I remember, I think I was on the first row, but at the back, and they asked me, I gave the correct answer. That teacher still smacked me. he was like incorrect. And in my head, I'm like, I don't understand why this thing is incorrect, because I'm sure that it's correct. You know how in primary school, you'll have a class teacher, and then like they have their desk in the class. That's basically their office. So my class teacher was there in class and he was sitting there and he saw that teacher's making me.
Sure.
And in his in her head, he's like, that answer is correct. Though.
Sure.
That guy probably like smacked half of the class, and by the time he got to like, it's like, damn, that answer is correct. And it's like, yeah, that's the correct answer. And it went on like nothing happened.
Sure.
I hated that teacher the rest of my primary years, Chief, because he didn't even apologize. I still even remember his name is wherever you are.
It's on you, dog.
But yeah, I want us to touch on this thing of, I'm fascinated by the fact of, you said, we're that type of student whereby you understand things better when you're reading them yourself than when you're listening to the teacher. Sure. So where do we find the balance? Because I also used to struggle with that, whereby you say you have to spend 8 hours in school, and for that 8 hours, 7, you're listening to a teacher because the teachers are there, they're teaching, you only have 1 hour break or stuff like that. And then after that, you have to go do your own studying. That means for 8 hours, you wasted your 8 hours. So how do you navigate around that? And if there's a student that's like that, how do they navigate around that?
It comes to a point where you go back at home, obviously after school, you go back at home. So it became a tradition, or it became what you call a norm, right? To me, that, okay, when I get back home, I just do the necessary things I have to do in the house. Obviously fix my uniform for the next day and what stuff. Then obviously I'll just indulge in the books. But really I'll be indulging because I'm pushed by some interests. So ideally I said to you that I get to understand when I'm studying by myself. But the interesting thing is that now, as much as I'm studying, the interest grows, right? And I'm getting to uncover a lot of realities about myself within the such subject on learning. And at the midst of that, now I get to have interest or interesting questions on my mind. So now that propels me to ask more questions. And when I get to seek and learn and lean deeper into understanding, I find myself studying and more enjoying more of the stuff. Like I would push up until maybe 2 a.m. Even my mother would get so worried and would come and say, nah, man. And now, like, an interesting thing, I wouldn't even start studying high school things. I would now be downloading stuff on the internet. Like I'll download a lot of really interesting stuff because obviously you study one subject, then I'll get to or one context. Like in like if you look at the base of mathematics, right? Obviously, I'm keen to say that I'm obviously not too deep in the sense that I understood what's going on there. But with the effect of searching, right, I understood that, okay, there are structures of mathematics and it's more like it grows and it's so large.
So let's speak about that, because you're saying that you download content that's even outside of your curriculum, right? Was it only for maths? Because when I met you, hello, prof, you this person that's really good in mathematics. Was it only for maths, or did you do that across all the subjects, like your physics and...
Oh, yes. So now I would just say the math poured love for the other subjects. And the math opened my neuron net and my neuron, like what do you call it, opened my brain up for understanding more of these other subjects. Because I was someone who was also, I was finding interests. I never knew I was very much interested in the English language, right? Because not in the sense of like English itself, but I was interested in the literature. The understanding, the logic behind it, the sense it made, and the beautiful poetic stance that they used to have. So I would used to chill a lot with my English
poetic
teacher.
Stuff in maths? Or in English?
English, yes.
Prof, why is you using crazy English? Now I'm sitting here, I'm confused.
Mathematics is also poetic, but remember, it's the poetry of logical ideas. So now if we look at it in a constructive sense, so the English, I'll just be teaching or like sitting with my high school teacher, my English teacher. So like I'll sit with him and I'll get to uncover a lot of things in English, right? And like diving deeper into stuff like your novels, your stuff like that, and the kind of people who inspired English in the olden days, and how did they manage to even actually was interested in people who are writing about stories that never happened, like imagination.
Like fiction,
right? So I was like, interesting, but not just the binding of the words and everything else. So like it poured so much interest there, but I didn't know if I was a good crammer at the same time. I never knew that I was so good in cramming, but I would study for my own cramming. What do I mean by that? I would obviously, I was so good because I knew that, okay, my mother actually was good in cramming apparently. So I feel like I got that from her. So for those other theory subjects, I just know, brother, man, I just studied the day before. I just cram everything. And I go and print out 100%.
Well, while we're still there, let's speak about that, because this is the same question I asked when we had our first study break podcast, I had my friend Lungelo here, and the first question I asked was like, do you believe that some people are just born inherently smart, right? And because to me, it doesn't make sense. You study the day before, you get 100% the next day.
Sure.
It blows my mind. So it's like, do you think some people are just born inherently smart?
Indeed. Other people have soft, spongy brains.
So you really believe that some people are born smart?
Yeah. So
elaborate.
Yeah, definitely. I do believe that, because obviously, man, we can also look back into history, right? Obviously, I'll go out of context a bit. If you go back into history, you have the most greatest innovators that you know, people who created all these things we are doing now. Like, mind you, these people obviously had their own educational system, right? And mind you, they had a lot to do at that point in time. So I understand that like intelligence or genius or prodigy, in a sense, it comes from birth. Sometimes it happens that you are just born naturally inclined.
We can push it.
Sometimes it just happens that you are naturally smart.
It's fine.
Like you are absolutely intelligent. You're excellent. Your brain can easily simulate all the understanding in one go.
Yeah.
So like it's proper. Like there are people like that. Then there are people who have to have an interest first in the thing. Then their interest drives them into touching that part of the brains that make them smart in a sense.
But here's my theory, right? And I always say this because I do study tips kind of content, right? And people always say, oh, I had this specific girl that was in my life, and she always said, bless you, you're always saying these things on the internet. Do they really work? You get what I'm saying? Do you really think someone who's born not as gifted as you would use these tips and then they would work? And I'm like, I don't believe that there are people who are born as geniuses. That's my belief. I don't believe there are people who are born as geniuses. But I believe that there are people who push their brains to the point that they surpass the brain of the average human being, right?
Yeah.
And I'm saying it from my context. I always tell this story that I feel like the reason why I used to do so well in school is because my mom pushed me. I remember when I was doing grade 1 or grade 2. We used to use those DBE books. These are the blue books. It was blue, pink, and
those are the you cry 100%.
Yeah, like you have to write. For maths it was blue. I remember for maths it was blue.
And have that woman.
It was a workbook. It was a workbook. It has like those cartoons and stuff like that.
Yes.
So what I do is, my mom used to say, I didn't have friends when I was in grade 1, grade 2, or my early years of school, right? I didn't have friends. So my mom would always say, you can't just sit around when you haven't completed that book, right? So I'll study ahead, Chief. I'll be doing content that we're going to do the next month, the 4th month. By the time we do it in class, for me, it's a revision. And I feel like because I always push my brain to learn things alone without relying on the teacher, my brain got used to be, I don't know, it got used to solving things, solving problems. And you know how they say when you're still young, you can adjust your brain and stuff like that. So by the time I got to like
high school,
grade 7, high school, I was already used to that work ethic. My brain was already like, okay, cool. Whatever challenge you have, you can solve it. You have the capability to do it.
Yeah.
So that was my theory going through high school, that I feel like you're not born smart. You just pushed your brain to the point that it adjusted and became, I don't know, better than the average human being. The average human being is like, okay, cool, I have to wait for the teacher to come teach me something for me to solve it. If I feel discomfort when I'm solving a certain problem, I can give up, right? But with me, it was like, okay, cool, blessing, you only have yourself. You'll solve this problem one way or the other. If I don't solve it today, I'm going to sleep, wake up in the morning and try to solve it until I figure it out. And that work ethic, it carries you through. By the time you get to high school, you get to university, it's like you already have that grit in you, which most people don't have. So that's my theory. I don't know. You think people are just inherently born smart?
Yes, ideally, obviously, you can partition however you want to say it. Obviously, we are all unique in a sense. And by uniqueness, I mean, we are unique in how we view stuff, in how we understand stuff. And some people are very common, right? It's a universal, like, if I meet this guy is very relatable. So if the concept of relatability. So some people are relatable in a sense, you can relate. But how, in what sense? You can relate in a sense that in your class, you may find that there's always that outliers. But let's also make sense on what outliers. Also outliers, some people who fail a lot or people who are getting extremely good marks. Then you get a cluster of points that are basically around 50. 60 in the band, 50, 60. Those are considered normal people. in a sense, are people who can achieve certain levels when they are pushed to that level of understanding, right? And obviously, naturally, it's proved statistically obvious that you have a majority of people being in the normal region. Hence, you have the normal distribution having that nice bell shape.
Don't you think it's because they haven't pushed themselves enough to get used to that thing to say,
finding
I'm capable?
finding their correct study methods or study techniques. You know, it's interesting that you realize that there are some schools where a kid is not a prodigy, but the way the school will push the kid, or the way the school will just manifold the kid into understanding. And when we realize them here in university, when you get to university, you're like, hey, these people are too smart, man. No, it's because the environment they are coming from where the teacher is just a professor from the university. He's just a retired professor who knows how the human brains work. They are taught by psychologists. They are taught by people who are actually professionals in their fields. So, you know, that's a privilege of putting your kid in such schools.
I don't know what you feel about this, but have you ever looked at the requirements of being a teacher? Like, if you want to apply at university and be a teacher. Nah, like, you know, what does you think about that?
Sorry, man, those who are doing teaching.
Have you ever looked at them?
It's such a very beautiful thing.
No shade to the teachers, right? No shade
not
to
at all. Not at all.
Yeah.
Sorry to those who are being teachers. Man. See, as I'm saying, we have a spectrum of interest, a spectrum of situation, and a spectrum. You're good, fuck it. I'm doing it.
Yeah.
Let's start with the first case. The interest. Some people are just naturally good, and also they used to the way they explain concepts.
I love where you're going with this. Yeah.
The way they explain concept to you, it's nice. You can actually, and you can see the progress of the student happening. Then there are those ones where you are saying, you know, situation forces me to take teaching, right? And it's okay, guys.
It's the only thing I qualify for.
Yeah, because
I don't want you to say it's fine.
Yes, I'm not saying
it's
guys. It's fine, and that's good what I'm saying. But ayisebenzeli yona.
Yeah.
Ngona umsebenzi oba nawo kodwa ayisebenzeli thina. Ngichaza ukuthini? I'm trying to explain in a sense that obviously you're going to have work, but your work won't be effective enough to produce the kind of, you know, students we need.
That's what I want to say, né? And I'm going to say this direct. Guys, let's not study teaching if you're not interested in teaching, or you don't love teaching, right? Because you're killing people's futures here. Like, legit, you're really killing people's futures. You see, I don't have a problem with the requirements to study teaching. They can be whatever they are, meaning that more people can get into it, right? But let's not use it as, okay, cool, that's the only thing I qualified for. Because I feel like teaching, being a teacher, that's one of the most crucial jobs. It's like being a doctor, chief.
Sure.
Right? We can't take a doctor and say, just because you qualify for a doctor, go study a doctor. That's why you have to set high requirements, because you're dealing with people's lives.
Indeed.
Right? With a doctor, it's literal, because you're really dealing with someone's life.
Yeah.
Teacher, the same thing, chief. You're dealing with someone's life.
Yeah.
You gotta be able to, and I feel like teachers are a key component, because as much as
that's the first line of defense.
Yeah, teaching is not only about like portraying information only and saying, I want to get this person to understand. Teaching comes with a lot of roles.
Sure.
You have to spark that passion in children sometimes. It's like, you know how education is so dysfunctional that people are forced to take science even if they don't want to take science, right?
Yeah.
So one key job as a teacher is to convince the students, not convince them, but spark that passion in them so that they love that thing so much that they can have the motivation to do that thing, right? But if you're always demotivating them now, you're always saying, professor is the only one that's going to be successful in this class. The rest, you guys are just wasting your time.
Yeah.
You know what they say?
They usually say it's kapabanya man.
Yeah, the kapabanya man. It's like,
indeed we are.
Chief, you're killing people's dream, like legit. I'm saying this today, guys. Let's not study teaching because that's the last resort. Yeah, I like what you said, that we should give everyone a chance, right? I feel like what's nice about platforms like this or the internet is we're not trying to bash or anything. We're just trying to provide constructive feedback. And maybe one key takeaway we can take from this is, if you are a teacher and you got into it because you're like, this is the only thing I can qualify for, shift your mindset from this is just a job. This is not just a job like you a builder or whatever. In fact, I don't feel like there's a job whereby you have to do it and say, nah, this is just a job. Because there's always an outcome. So shift your mindset from this is just a job to I'm really handling people's futures and lives here. So I'm going to show up each and every day, make sure that I make as much impact as I can. Because, it's so weird to go to a teacher and every time you ask them something and then they say, I don't know. I don't know. And you can see that this person is not doing any effort. After he leaves class here or once school knocks off, he's standing, he's going to groove, he's going to drink alcohol. You get what I'm saying? Tomorrow he comes back, he doesn't know the answers. At least put in some effort and say, if I don't know something, I'm going to say, let me go tackle this problem at home and I'm going to send you the answers via WhatsApp, or tomorrow I'm going to come back and show you the answers. And really devote yourself to the point. And I always say this, now with teachers, it doesn't take a lot. It only takes 1 to 3 years of sacrifice.
Yeah.
Because you're always teaching the same thing year in, year out. Just 3 years of commitment and saying, I want to master each and every problem that's there, understand it. And then after that, you can relax all you want because you already know like every problem that you can come across. Maybe like in a year, you can only come across to like, in maths, most of the times in maths, you can only come across 2 problems only that like, oh yeah, this one, I've never seen it before.
Sure.
And then you can ask someone if you know someone who's good at maths, or you can just say, okay, cool, I'm just going to try and solve it and help the students. So I think the key takeaway is, if you're a teacher, understand that you exactly like a doctor.
Yeah.
You deal with people's futures and lives. Make sure that you take your job as seriously as you can and you give it your all. And I think we can do Shakespeare. Do you think it's still necessary in today's age for high school students to learn about Shakespeare's poems, those short stories, your novels, or whatever it is, right? I think I only did poems when it comes to Shakespeare.
Yeah.
I don't know. Was he only a poet, or did he write like other forms of literature?
It depends on the language.
Nah.
So, no. wait.
No, he's kidding. What do you mean it depends on the language? Fal first and English second. Or I did Fal, but which one? The whole language. I think it's necessary for students to still learn Shakespeare's literature content in today's age.
To some extent, it is necessary, but not too emphasized. By that, I mean, introduce more modern stuff, right? Do introduce a little bit of taste of, because that's what Zulu says, but obviously in this context, I'm saying that we have to look in the past and see what inspired the present. Because I believe that obviously William Shakespeare's ideas really inspired a lot of literate people who focus too much on literature. So in a sense, it is, I would say, yes, it is still necessary, but not too emphasized. In a sense that let's give it at least a young 20%, and 80% must be more of the modern language that we actually use now. Because obviously, from the period where William Shakespeare was to now, English has developed so much. Yeah. So much so that we can't even use some of the words that were used in those times. Thou shalt. We are not about you doing thou shalt. We don't care. We care about things that make sense now, right? Because if you tell me about thou, I say, look at this one. Then I move on.
So for me, it's like, I think it's necessary to still do Shakespeare, like you said, but they must strike a balance. Whereby they say, we're going to do Shakespeare and other people who are more recent. And in South Africa, per se, let's give more context to South African content. Let's encourage more people to write poems. Let's encourage more people to be authors, write short stories. And then we start teaching those stories to South African kids. And they can also relate. If we can tell more South African stories through those poems, that literature. Imagine if we would have stories, poems about GBV. GBV is one of the biggest things in the country right now, right? We have poems, short stories, and whatever. They're teaching about GBV. You get to instill this mindset to kids while they're still in high school. They get to learn about these things, about our current challenges, about all those kind of things. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, we're okay about learning about Shakespeare and saying, shall I compare thee to a summer's day? There's one me, multiple girls over the years in my uni days, but let's strike a balance, like you said. Let's strike a balance and say we're gonna teach Shakespeare just for the problem-solving type of vibes and introduce them to this difficult language, this English, this core of English, and at the same time, let's teach real stories from South Africans that have meaning, that are educational. So that's my opinion.
That's true. The problem solving, obviously, I like it. Obviously, we can think about it. Usually, when I think about the maybe application of English in terms of problem solving, like the use of the your Shakespearean thought process, would be good for people who are doing things like law. They say we are trying to solve some backhand problem you're having in your head, which is quite, because those are very deep context. You know how you have to be able to debug you have to be able to debug the thing to make sense. You know, sometimes, law, you find though in between the lines, which in the case doesn't make sense. Obviously, I don't know whether you get me right. It teaches more of like a constructive thinking than problem solving. There's a huge difference between constructive thinking and problem solving. Not a lot of people have, not a lot of people have the art behind constructive thinking, just like the way Shakespeare constructed that thing. I think
that's the word. That's the perfect word to use. Constructive thinking.
Yes. Obviously, then problem solving. Problem solving is basically being able to get the correct answer at the end of the day. Sharp. But constructive thinking is giving us an idea on how to approach problems. Yeah. So we don't care about the answer. We care about how you construct to get to the answer. It's more of logic than anything else. The world is full of logic. Ideally, I never had a funding for first year. I just came here, hopefully. Teacher said, Bursaries will fight for you.
Hey. You'll fight for me.
Yeah, Bursaries will find me. And mind you are owing UCT, brother, 180,000. But your first year is a bit low. It's a lot that man is approximately 200,000.
Staying in a catering rice.
Yeah. So, mind you, I never had the money to do that. But the courtesy of UCT of letting you stay, get to eat up until the whole year. Obviously that money took so much. So that money took years for me to come. It came very late, and obviously when it comes, it had to pay a lot of things. But then a nice thing is that obviously you have what you call an anticipated funding, stuff like that. So you can just put some money there, right? Anticipated funding, meaning there's definitely going to be some money that pays the account, but it's anticipated.
Let's move on to relationships. Let's move on to relationships, Chief. Because my podcast, the reason why I call it Study Break Podcast,
about life in general.
I share a lot of study tips and stuff like that. I'm saying if people need study tips, they can just go to a direct video whereby they'll listen to study tips, how to study, your 80-20 rule, your whatever it is.
Yeah.
Study Break Podcast, I want it to be so engaging. It's a conversation. I just want to understand the philosophy of people on life. So I want to understand your philosophy on love and relationships in general. Most people are never date in university because people are there to play. But I've seen people who find true love in university. Mm-hmm. What's your philosophy on relationships? Do you think you should wait to get to university and find someone in university, or in university play around, and then you'll find someone after university when you incorporate and you're more settled and you're more chilled, you know what you want? What's your philosophy on love and relationships?
Obviously, my reasoning behind it, right? It's when it comes to the concept of relationships and love, without even the train of thought, I believe that, yes, finding love is still possible. But in nowadays, I feel like winning lotto is actually more probable than finding true love.
Expanded that talk. I love that thought.
My idea is that, yes, you can find love, but it's very, very less likely. And if you look at it, people who get to find love are people who actually lower themselves. It's not because you don't have pride. You lower yourself, and your partner also lowers themselves.
What? Yeah, expand that. I want to understand.
Ukuba nempakamo in a relationship will never work. Why do I say that? There are people who know themselves. I'm too beautiful.
So with impakamo, let me just clarify. Impakamo, you mean ego, right?
Yes, definitely. Yeah. Having ego and having to think that, you are worth. Mm-hmm. You are worth more than what you have, and you also have external beliefs in your head while we're inside a relationship. I can always find someone better than you. It's a problem, right? Nobody said you can't, but the idea in a relationship is for you guys to lower yourself to each other, so that if this one listens, actually, this is a beautiful thing that I was told by my mom, is that for a relationship to make sense, there's always one person must be willing to be the Islam relationship.
There must be a fool.
There must be a fool.
Yeah.
For a relationship to make sense, there must always be Islam there. And it's because with Islam, It's just because it makes you guys meet, right? Because if both of us nimpagamo and both of us we are leveraged in knowing our standard or our status in living, then we are converging. Say, "Clash, I'm cool." Yeah. And now when we are clashing, everyone now says, "Amen." You stay. You're not even calling your partner for 4 hours or for a whole day. It's a problem. It's becoming more toxic. Yes, we know in relationships that you guys will fight and stuff like that. But relationship for work, I'm not saying true love is not there. Now, in nowadays, you must realize there's true love and there's induced true love.
Expand.
Induced true love, blessing. It's that kind of love where now you realize that, I can't lose blessing, man. I have to stick with blessing. You also can't lose the girl because you believe you can't find someone like hey. And also the girl can't leave you because she believes no, man. Blessing is the only person I knew from first year. Is the first person I've slept with in a sense.
No.
In that sense, man, it's induced love. I feel like it's forced love.
Like a way that uses attachment is...
Yes.
You attach to this person,
Indeed.
You reach a point whereby, okay, good, I spent so much time with you, I feel like I can't see life without you.
Yeah.
Because I'm used to you, you get what I'm saying? Yeah. And I feel like I've been in that situation whereby I always say this in second year, whereby I felt like I loved someone so much that I didn't want to lose them. And I realized that later on it was attachment issues. So I was like, dog.
Indeed.
My entire life, I never thought of entering a relationship, but I gave this one a shot. And it was like, it's either it's working or not, chief. We're going to go through this, but even if you're going through the downs, the ups and whatever, I'm going to be here.
Definitely.
And it's like, you lose it and be like, you just attached. You have attachment issues. You attach to this person. You're scared of seeing a life without them because you've been spending so much time with them that you can't see a life without them.
Yeah.
So to me, it's like attachment issues, more of like whatever it is. But because here's my thing, Prof. My whole analogy is, personally, I'm going to be frank with you. I don't believe in, let me not say I don't believe in love, but it's like, to me, it's tricky to believe in love in this day and age because I look at how most relationships, they end. People who meet young, they date for years. By the time they're old, they divorce.
Oof.
Because it's like, I feel like people get bored in general. It's like, yo, I've been with this person for 40 plus years.
That's the idea.
Now.
Yes,
I need something new. You know what I'm saying? So with me, it's like, it's so difficult for me to believe in love when I'm looking around and I'm like, yo, everyone I know doesn't last in relationships.
Yeah.
Old people are divorcing. Young people, we just confused. We don't know what we want. We enter in relationships, we exit. We're doing all those kind of things. So for me, it's like, it's difficult. So I want to how do I navigate this? Because I'd say if you're a university student, you get to university, don't really take that risk. But now it's me saying, don't lose your shot at true love just because you're scared, you fear.
Yeah.
And maybe my reasoning is based on trauma. You know what I'm saying? I was raised by parents who divorced and now I'm traumatized. I'm like, yo, there's no such thing as love. Because you've seen your parents. It's like, yo, these people, they've been together for this many years. All of a sudden, everything goes down south. Everything goes down. The love is no longer there. And you ask yourself, how does the love end now? Chief, you guys said you love each other. You said till death do us part. Where's that? Where's that now?
It's just like I'm saying, like, if not everyone is meant to be rich, and not everyone is meant to be poor, and not everyone is meant to fall in love, and not everyone is meant to be married. So all those statements, just amalgamate them, put them together. So what I'm trying to say to you, Blessing, yes, it's good. Other people are affected by their upbringing. And it all lies in healing the inner child. With women or with girls, I believe that it also goes back to the father figure, right? If you're a girl child and you grew up with no father figure, right? You will try to look, most people, not just generally, not all women will behave in that sense, but it's very much counter relatable in a sense that some women will try to find a man the father figure in
a man,
right? Meanwhile, obviously, if a girl grew up with a strong relationship with their father, ideally that gives them the idea of saying, okay, my dad treats me good. I'm this girl because I'm a daddy's girl. Then when you are coming as a boyfriend. Mm-hmm. So they don't structure their thoughts in maybe trying to weight you with on how their father treats them, right? The idea won't be saying, okay, Blessing is capable of buying me, or Blessing is responsible of getting me this. If I'm missing this, Blessing is responsible of getting that sense. But we are battling with a lot of things. So that's why the idea behind true love won't come easy as it. Everyone is capable of falling in love. That's what I'm just saying. But not everyone is capable of staying in love. Love is all about tolerance. Tolerating nonsense. It's all about tolerating nonsense. Someone telling you more.
Love is about tolerating.
Love is all about tolerance, guys. Let's not lie to each other. You are tolerating nonsense. You have to wake up every day. Someone is having moods.
This go to TikTok, Chief.
Someone is having moods. They are waking up feeling somehow. So when you have to understand and feel pity for them. You understand? Now, love is also all about, it's a choice, but at the same time, as much as it's choice, it's all about also being selfish as a person. Not getting enough.
But
it's a problem.
Here's my thing. I like that you said
it's diabolic.
There are people who are dealing with, like, they have trauma they had from their inner child is had.
Yes.
And personally, I always say this: all black people, and I'm gonna say it with my chest out, all black people, or let me say majority of black people, our inner child is had. I don't wanna lie. Like, dog, have you ever seen how our relationships as black people, they never work out?
Oh. Bro.
White people, white people, their relationships are working out. And I always say this girl I always speak to, and I'm like,
how difficult it is to share lunch with your girlfriend, Vito.
What do you mean?
You just know it won't end nicely. You just end up fighting, and you can't even stay with your girlfriend for 5 hours without arguing. You don't argue. It's a problem.
Are you speaking from experience?
Obviously, everyone has their own experiences. Obviously, now I had an experience where I was dating someone who was hot-headed. So it's good, gents. It's a very open thing.
Yeah.
For us to realize that, man, it's not natural. It's not healthy. Where you are sitting with a person for more than 5 hours, you just know good eye. By the time you go, it's a bihlangene. Azothola phezulu. Yo. Ziyabila, zibu loudspeakers, yasha. Kubi. Yaliwa. My punchline, my drop, my phone drop, my blocking, my deleting of pictures. It's a problem, guys. So we can't.
I feel like
we can't find ourselves in that situation. So
we a student, after hearing this, avoid relationships.
Yeah, guys. As a student, it's very important.
How can you be studying when people are blocking you?
You can't, guys. guys, wait. As a student, it's difficult, guys. Guys, do you know the pain of being of wanting to fight back, but the person has already dropped the call, and you have already fixed that line of also issue. You have already fixed it. Also issue le yampahla le. Kodwa udropile. So awukwazi ukuthi uvule laptop. If ikunyanyise le yanto le. Uvela uhlanye into fethu, you gotta go sleep fethu. You gotta go to the arrest and wait outside for no reason. You're gonna hit uzashaya umoya stroke, and umoya ufila ilanga libalele. The day will be there will be heat wave, but whether you're gonna feel the coldness in the hot air, it's difficult, guys. It's a difficult thing.
Guys, let's close the podcast. This is Study Break Podcast, the podcast you can watch when you want to procrastinate. I'm joking, not procrastinate, but if you're taking a study break, I feel like there's a lot that we could have spoken about.
There's still gonna be another
but
session,
we can do another.
Live indeed.
Yeah, we can tap into another session as well. Because when I met you, we had story. I think that's the story we also have to talk about when I met you.
Well,
but it's so weird that you call yourself Professor Chief. How do you call yourself?
Ooh, that's a beautiful one. It's not in me calling myself Professor. Courtesy to my two friends of mine from Bigot Home. Actually, who are here. One is a doctor and one is an accountant. These are two guys from back at home. Because of that idea of busy, I was perceived as too advanced to that level of reasoning. So it's the both of them who started the concept of professor. And obviously it skyrocketed to professors calling me professor. And do you know how hard is it guys to be a professor? You'll be called a doctor but not a professor. There's a high distinction between the two.
What's the distinction between a professor?
Being a professor, it's someone who took on postdoctoral studies, and after postdoctoral studies, a lot of in-service training and supervising a lot of PhD students and publishing a lot of theses and stuff like that. Then you'll actually be acquainted, the significance of professorship. So that's the idea.
So a doctor is just do PhD.
A doctor is just someone who passed their thesis, man.
20 years?
Remember, at city we have the vice chancellor.
Yeah.
Speech lectures.
Yeah.
That will induct you to full professorship.
Yes.
Most people are inducted
after some years. Yeah.
25. Yeah, it takes a lot.
You?
6 years.
So do you want to be a professor?
I was already called a professor, so I doubt I'll have to be a professor because even professors call me prof.
So it's useless. This thing of titles.
Me already a professor. I don't care. I won't even.
The doctor made you of professorship.
Indeed, so I'm the doctor made you of professorship, but with qualifications and real ones from UCT.
Guys, let's close the show. Make sure that you like this video, you comment, you subscribe. Getting to 10K by the end of April. And I'll see you on the next one. Yeah, Professor.
Indeed, my friend. This is laughing through. Let me go to the toilet.
There are so many moments. Chief, you signed an NDA here. We don't show you the thing before they drop. You'll see them on TikTok.
You can check the box.